Okay, so I'm going to talk about mark the unexpected, animacy preference, and motion marking in visual language. So similarly to Irmak, I will be focusing on motion lines and circumfixing lines. And in particular, I will look at how they mark animates and inanimates. So this is a very common distinction, also known in linguistics, and that is that animate entities are the ones often considered alive and sentient, and inanimate ones are considered not alive and not sentient. And this distinction seems to be particularly important for humans because, and as we know from psychological and linguistic research, there is something that we call animacy preference, and that is the preference for animate entities over inanimate ones. So we see in experimental research that participants react faster to pictures of animates than inanimates. We also see they react faster to animate motion compared to inanimate motion. And in language, inanimate objects tend to be less morphologically marked than animates. And we can see an example of this in one of the well-studied phenomena in this domain, and that is differential object marking. And here we have an example from Croatian, where masculine nouns undergo differential object marking. So here the noun tiger, tigar, receives an accusative affix a, because it's an animate noun in the syntactic object position. So vidjela sam tigra receives this marking because we have an animate noun as an object, while when we have an inanimate noun like table in the function of object, we don't receive any marking because the noun is inanimate. And the reasoning for this in linguistic literature goes something like this. So the expected alignment we tend to see is that usually animate entities are subjects of the sentence because they're associated with agency and intentionality. So they have the more active role in a sentence. Whereas inanimate entities are more likely to be an object in the semantic role of a patient. So they have a more passive role and the action is done on them. They're not the ones doing the action. So when that is not the case, when animates are an object, then they receive additional morphological marking. And this is something we're going to refer to in this talk as mark the unexpected, which we claim is a principle that also holds in visuals, and it's a potentially a cognitive universal. Then how do we perceive that something is animate? So experimental research in psychology shows that goal-directed movement is the crucial factor of perceiving entities as animate. Several experiments, for example, showing blobs moving in aimless and goal-directed ways. So these kinds of experiments show that when people see a blob moving in a goal-directed way, then they give it certain animate features like intentionality, whereas if they're moving aimlessly, they're not perceived as animate. And so this goal-directed movement is an autonomous type of movement where the agent directs itself towards a goal. And we are going to then use this idea of goal-directed movement to define what animacy preference means in comics. So this will be the preference for animates to move in a goal-directed way. And this is directly relevant for our motion and circumfixing lines because motion lines are goal-directed. They imply the direction of the movement, while circumfixing lines do not. Just like Irmak pointed out, the circumfixing lines might look like they're shaking or moving back and forth, but there is no clear directionality. And so for our study, what this means is that we're going to be looking for the cases where we have animates and inanimates, and we expect that animates are moving in a goal-directed motion. But if we find the unexpected behavior where inanimates are moving in a goal-directed way, then we think they might receive additional marking. And our prediction is that this additional marking is going to be via motion lines, because motion lines are goal-directed, so they can denote that kind of motion. While when it comes to circumfixing lines, we expect we might not see any difference because they do not have a particular association with goal-directedness in any way. Okay, so we also looked at the Tintin corpus at a subset of 331 comics from the countries you can see here. And here is also a histogram with all the different styles that are represented. So these are our results. When it comes to motion lines, so we looked at the average number of motion lines per mover per comic. And what we find is that inanimates are much more likely to get marked by motion lines than animates, which supports our hypothesis and supports our prediction that, in fact, inanimates need to be more marked by motion lines whenever they are moving in a goal-directed way. And with motion lines, the motion is always goal-directed. And this is a very significant result, which we also find across all the different global regions, which we take as proxy for different cultural regions. And it is also the case across the different styles. Only two styles were not deemed significant in the post hoc analysis. This is manga and realistic, but the trend still seems to be consistent with our observations. And when it comes to circumfixing lines, we again can confirm our prediction, and that is that there is no difference between the amount of marking of animates and inanimates, because circumfixing lines do not distinguish any meaningful differences in the motion of animates and inanimates. And the same lack of difference is found across global regions and styles. And to summarize this, we looked at the marking by motion lines and circumfixing lines in comics. Motion lines are goal-directed, circumfixing lines are not associated with any particular direction. And then when it comes to animates, because goal-directed movement is expected from them, they are less morphologically marked by motion lines compared to inanimates, while inanimates tend to be more morphologically marked by motion lines because goal-directed movement is not expected from them. And this is what we call then the principle of mark the unexpected. So marking that additionally. And when it comes to circumfixing lines, they're compatible with both goal-directed and non-goal-directed movement, and therefore are compatible at an equal level with animate and inanimate motion. And we see no differences because of that. Okay, and so to conclude, mark the unexpected in our paper, if you're curious to check out the preprint, we define it in terms of surprisal, and we propose that this is a mechanism that minimizes the number of possible interpretations and thus minimizes surprisal by means of explicitly morphologically marking the element appearing in an unexpected context. In this case, inanimates moving in a goal-directed way. And we also connect this to language, just like we saw in differential object marking, despite not being the exactly parallel comparison. It is the same kind of mechanism where we mark the unexpected behavior. And so we believe that this principle is valid across spoken and visual languages, and as we've shown across many different cultures and styles. And we propose it might be universal cognitive principle across domains. And that is it. Thank you. And feel free to check out the preprint on my website and an outreach summary of the talk. Thank you.